Yeah, pretty much. Let me explain. 5 years ago on a random Thursday in July, supermodel and skinny legend Gigi Hadid went on her Instagram to rave about this girl from New York City and how she was her morning inspo. The girl in question's name is, and sorry if I'm mispronouncing this, Nanja Awasum. She was unaware that Gigi Hadid made this cosign, and throughout the day, she was being approached by random people who recognized her from Gigi Hadid's shout out. And that was just on the first day. Nanja went out to boost her modeling career with brands and agencies reaching out to her. And now she's worked with beauty companies like Maybelline and has done runway shows. Now, this is the Instagram story that Gigi Hadid posted. She posted the back of her head. If she didn't write a comment there, I would have thought this is a photo she accidentally took on her phone. What Gigi Hadid did is what people refer to as a cosign. A cosign in the cultural sense is when someone with an established platform or merit in an industry shines their light on a person who they deem as interesting and cool to get their audience onto this new talent, telling the world, hey, I rock with this person, you should too. A lot of things can be cosigns. An Instagram story post, a repost, in the music world, featuring on a song, showing up on a talk show, even being seen hanging out with someone can be seen as a cosign. The music industry used to thrive off of cosigns. Some of your favorite modern day artists were only able to get a platform after being cosigned by already established talent, just like many industries. But the environment for the cosign has changed and in many ways died. In the big 2026, celebrities just don't have that much pull anymore. There's this local Toronto artist called Bianca Espiano that I follow. She's great. She makes indie music. You should definitely check her out. She has been posting her music independently on Instagram and TikTok for the past year or so, and she's been able to develop a lot of momentum with that. I think when she finished her first big run of all her singles, her Instagram account had 10K followers, and then she got into the feed of Justin Bieber, who then decided to repost 5 of her snippets on his Instagram story. We're talking about the closest thing that we've had since Michael Jackson reposting this indie girl from Toronto. You would have assumed that her career is overnighted, right? That she'd be flown out to LA the next day and become the next big thing. No, she only got 2,000 more followers. And although that's great, 2,000 more ears to your music, that's nothing. Justin Bieber has how many million followers, and he was only able to transfer that many to listen to Bianca's music? Isn't that strange? Doesn't that just prove that the cosign's dead? Well, that's all I want to talk about in this video today. Is the cosign dead? Did it change? How was Playboi Carti involved? I saw him in the thumbnail. Well, all that and more on the Alley channel. But first, let's do a history on. To understand how we got here, we have to understand where we came from. And where we came from was an era of cosigns. When we look back at how culture used to operate, cosigns from established players, especially in the entertainment industry, was the seemingly only way that you could get ahead and have a meaningful and impactful career in whatever industry you wanted to be in. I'm talking about, if you think about back when social media wasn't around, I know. If you wanted to be a musician, you had to pitch yourself and know an A&R or a label exec who would then bring you into a boardroom so you could pitch yourself to the label. There's positives and negatives to having cosigns like this. If you look at it at an artisanal sense, there's a bar being set by the previous generation, and they're only going to let what they see as good art come through, which sounds really refreshing as we live in an era of algorithmically fed slop content, a lot of it being AI generated and just soulless. As much as the bar being set by the prior generation of cosigners can be a good thing, it does leave a lot of detrimental things for the cosignee. Using this as the process of getting new artists in, the cosignee is bound by the creative confines of the cosigner. Example of this I can think of is that Kanye West, when he was first coming into the scene, was only able to make beats for the first couple years of his career because the cosigners of him, which was Jay-Z and his label at the time, only really wanted him for his beats. Same thing with Frank Ocean and his label. They only saw him as a songwriter. He was going by a different alias entirely. It wasn't until both of them kind of broke the confines of what the cosigners believed that they could do to where they could, reestablish what their artistic output meant to their bosses, more or less, so that they could have more artistic and creative liberty. But overall, this means that anything that would shift the paradigm too much would never be able to be fully actualized, because simply put, sometimes artists of the past just wouldn't approve of it, which can be overall limiting to the scope of what creative output can be had from the newer generation of artists. I mean, Kanye and Frank were exceptions from this rule. You might notice that there's a conflation between cosigns and actually being signed to a label, which when writing this wasn't intentional, but it makes sense if you think about it, because being signed is like the most official version of a cosign that you can get, and it can present a multitude of problems as well, because now there's a financial tie to someone cosigning you, which could then later found to be predatory. I mean, most artists don't come in knowing the ins and outs of the business that they work in, and so they're ripe to be taken advantage of. So yeah, this era of cosigns did have its benefits, but it did have a lot of problems. One, it limits the gatekeepers who control the space to a select few who, sure, they can keep the bar high, but they can also abuse their power dynamic in a bunch of different ways. Two, it confines what culture can creatively output if the gatekeepers are the ones who are dictating what the newer generation can put out. They might like a certain sound that they put out or a certain ability that they have in their artistic expression, but they won't let them go past that. Old people, unks, are generally out of touch, and that conflates a lot with something as progressive as music. It's an ever-changing environment. And three, my final point is that the worst part about the old era of cosigns is that it's just not possible for most creative people to have that big break. I mean, let's go back to the example at the start of this video. What are the chances one of, if not the biggest supermodel in the world, took a photo of your outfit while you were walking down the streets and posted it and praised it on social media? You'd probably have an easier time getting struck by lightning and winning the lottery in the same day. Same thing with like you being in the same room as a music executive who knows a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who can get you places. So if you're a musician or any type of artist who wants to make it big in an industry, and these are the circumstances that you face yourself with, I can see why a lot of people think it's unreasonable. I mean, sure, it's a really romanticized story, being in the right place in the right time and the right person found you. I mean, we hear that fairy tale happen time and time again, but the reality is that system doesn't have an equal playing field. You're not competing based off of artistic merit or talent. You're competing based off of proximity to the location you're at. If you're in a small town, if you're in a big city where there's more opportunities, and where you're working at, and who you might happen to run to. And you can do everything right in all those instances and check off all those boxes, and then just have the platform that you work so hard to try to achieve be taken away by some executive son who wanted to pursue a music career, who gets the music manager and the marketing team and everything behind them just because he has sperm was shot out of a music executive's balls and not you. That sounds really discouraging, right? But now we don't even need the middleman in the label or the A&R and whatever. We can just do it ourselves and skip the middleman with social.
Please, whatever.
So remember at the start of the video where I said cosigns are dead? Well, I lied so that you could get to this part of the video right here. What we knew as the modern cosign did die, but in its place came a new, more democratized version of the cosign in social media. Every time you see a musician online and you like or comment or repost or just watch their video in full length, you are inadvertently doing what titans of the music industry used to do, but just on a micro scale. And then when a bunch of people do that behind an artist, it basically does the same thing, which is give them a platform and give them buzz. It's no longer an A&R telling a label exec, I heard some cool shit, go check it out. It's you going on your feed, seeing a post with 1,000-ish likes, being like, hey, this song's pretty catchy. Ooh, let me give this artist a follow and listen to their music. And then the latter instance, now you have a fan, now you have streams, all without having to give up anything financially or morally to participate in music. Kumbaya! Nothing's ever that perfect. If you've been on the internet at all in the last 5 years, then you've definitely stumbled upon every single different type of marketing gimmick independent musicians do. Oh, if you like this video, it's like a backstage pass to one of my shows when I blow up and go on tour. If you're a fan of XYZ artist, then check me out. People would give a mainstream artist 30 seconds of their time when they post, but they won't give a starving independent artist this much time. Oh, look at me. I'm a starving independent artist. Blah, 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 blah. Don't get me wrong, too. I'm not hating. It does get annoying, but it's a necessary annoying. There's not simply other ways of doing it organically. I've done this to promote my mixtape and my singles, and I still do this because it's the current meta and strategy on getting people to listen to your music. I mean, even this is a long-winded way of me getting connected to people who are interested in what I have to say so that they listen to my music. This online version of just busking in the street is an unintended consequence of this democratized version of attention and having no gatekeepers, where the cosign is so democratized that everyone is shooting for everyone's attention all at the same time. And to branch off of that point, this ability to get your cosign democratized does hinder the art a little bit, because now instead of just focusing on your music, you do have to spend your time being a marketing director and building a brand and posting content, which were like full-time jobs that you would do if you got signed to a label and you had a team behind you. But now you have to take that all on while maintaining a healthy amount of music output as well, which can be a lot, especially considering a lot of independent artists also just have a full-time job and they're pursuing music on the side. You already have not a lot of time to work on music, and now you have to learn like After Effects to be able to make some cool video to market your music. It's created this weird new status quo where you have to be able to make a certain type of output that's exciting, consistent, and easily replicable. There's an art to it for sure. And the weird thing with social media is that even if you do get traction, it could be for the wrong reasons. I know Adam Killa came out recently and said that he hates that when people come up to him, they don't even recognize that he's dancing to his own music in his videos, and that he's become more of an influencer than a musician at this point. And that can happen if you don't have a music first mentality on social media. And I mean, you don't want to just keep posting music, because that can get annoying. So you do want to kind of put your personality out there a little bit. But dude, there's so many rules and it changes every day. It can be a headache for the artists to try to figure this out, while again trying to make the best music that they can make. I follow a couple artists that I like who are doing this independent shit really well, and I'm gonna just put them here. Gunner, Daphne, Bianca, like I mentioned prior, Sarissa. They all make great content to promote their music, and it matches the aesthetic that they've been trying to go for really well. But you know what? Maybe social media isn't just the only way. You know how I said I lied to you earlier that the cosign is dead? Well, that was also a lie, because there's one person who does cosigns right in the modern mainstream music scene, and I feel like he might be the prime example of the best way to do a cosign, and that is Playboi Carti and his label Opium.
Wake up, filthy.
Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking, subscribing, and turning on post notifications. I also release music. You can check it out on this YouTube page and any music page. It's Ali ! On anywhere you can find music. Also, please check out my social medias at Ali has a cool username. Thank you so much, and back to the video. Opium is an extremely interesting case for how to properly cosign an artist. See, rapper-owned labels like Opium have been a thing for quite a while, and I'd argue that besides some rare unicorn instances, most rapper labels exist to just flesh out the world of the mainstream act without any of the other artists ever taking over the spotlight of the flagship artist in the label. Examples off the top of my head are labels like OVO and ASAP Mob. You have your main artists in Drake and Rocky. Then you have the second less popular artist in that label, Party Next Door and ASAP Ferg. But then you have the smaller artists like Majid Jordan, Roy Woods, ASAP Ant, ASAP Nast, who when you go on their Spotify, you notice that their most popular songs are collaborative songs with the flagship artists from their label. And then there's a huge drop off in the numbers from that song to all their other work, because people aren't showing up for them. They're showing up for that one feature that the mainstream flagship artist is doing for them. Now, when you look at Opium, it's a much smaller label. I'm going to focus on the two frontmen besides Carti on that label, who are Ken Carson and Destroy Lonely. What Carti did different on his label is that he never gave either of them a feature on any of their albums or any of their singles until they became popular. And when I mean popular, I mean headlining rap festivals popular. I remember a lot of online rhetoric at the time about how Carti is such a bad label head because he is making his artists work so hard without ever giving them a proper cosign, like how the OVO and ASAP Mob people used to do it. I think people were expecting that because that was the status quo at the time, but Carti decided to do something differently. He let Ken and Lone flesh out their discographies, and Carti provided them with an interesting position because by co-signing them by just being in his circle, signed to his label, people decided to tap in, whereas they might not have wanted to listen to Ken Carson or Destroy Lonely if they weren't affiliated with Carti. So the cosign was strong enough to get people to listen, but it wasn't so overbearing that people were only going to tap in if Carti was involved. This led to Ken Carson and Destroy Lonely I'm assuming having tougher process in getting established. But if you look at what resulted after the fact, it's pretty genius. Both of them on their Spotifys have songs that are in the hundreds of millions, and their top 10s have no features besides them featuring each other. Their most popular songs are just them. And now, when you think of Ken Carson and Destroy Lonely, sure, there's always going to be that Playboi Carti association, but they have such a stronger brand presence because they've been able to spend the time to carve out their own unique audience. And I believe if they went down the traditional rapper label path of Carti hopping on a feature on one of their first ever projects, that most of the Opium fans would just listen to that song, skip through Ken Carson's discography, and not really give it the time of day because Ken just didn't have enough discography, enough like solid work by himself for people to want to stick around. This time that Carti gave both Ken and Lone led them to develop and flesh out their discography. And now I would argue that they're on equal levels with Playboi Carti. This measured approach to a cosign that Carti did by not overextending himself was by many seen as a selfish thing to do, but I think it was the perfect way of doing a cosign. So at the end of the day, is the cosign dead? As we previously knew it, yes. But I think that's a great thing because with it, we've learned from the benefits and the perils of cosigns, and we've not only been able to, in my eyes, develop a better version of the cosign, which is the more democratized version that we see on social media, but the artists that still have that mainstream appeal have learned from the mistakes of prior legends and have been able to seemingly continue cosigns, but in a much more productive manner where their artists still have to do a lot of the work. But with that, their careers are more solidified and merit-based, and they're not going to be one-hit wonders with that one hit being a feature from the single that they did with a bigger artist on that label. But you let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, check out my music. I uploaded a recap vlog of my first ever festival performance. Do check that out if you're interested. And yeah, this has been Ali. See you next week. Peace.